So this is going to be kind of an unpopular opinion, but you don't actually need charcoal for your terrarium. And we're going to talk about why that is in this video. Hey guys, it's Joe here with another video from Hermit Garden, and today we're going to talk about why you don't need charcoal for your terrarium. So if you've done any research into building terrariums, if you've watched any how-to videos out there, read any blog posts about this stuff, all of them tell you that you need to add charcoal to your terrarium either as a drainage layer or maybe as a separation layer between the drainage layer and your substrate. And it is my opinion that that is not actually necessary. So let's kind of walk through the details about why that is. So first, let's talk about what charcoal is and what it does for your terrarium. So charcoal, sometimes called activated carbon, it comes in two forms mainly. So it could be either in the form of this black chunks of rocks or this black powder. Either one of those will be fine. They function the same way essentially. But basically what it does is it binds to any toxins, chemicals that might be floating around, not just in a terrarium, but just in general. It's used in industrial applications like wastewater treatment plants, pharmaceuticals. It's used even in like aquariums. It's used as a filtration mechanism to suck out all the chemicals and unwanted stuff that you might find in the water or in the air. And the way it does that is through something called adsorption, with a D, not a B. And what adsorption is as chemicals pass through, get in contact with the charcoal, those little particles, they chemically bind to tiny microscopic pores that are on the activated carbon. And charcoal and activated carbon is really good at this because it has a whole bunch of these tiny pores all over the surface. It has a very high surface area with all those pores on it that are just waiting, ready to bind to any chemicals. And that's what makes activated carbon so good at being a purification or filtration material, is its filtration properties. So when it comes to a terrarium, the idea with activated carbon is that it's supposed to suck out all the toxins, the chemicals. So this could be things like bacteria, nitrites, acetic acids, organic acids, and all sorts of stuff that could potentially harm your plants. And the idea is if you have activated carbon in your terrarium, it's going to suck out those chemicals and toxins as the water passes through and gets in contact with that charcoal. And also sucks them out from the air directly. And the idea is that's supposed to help protect your plants, give them cleaner air and cleaner water. So that's great and all, but that's actually not a necessity for your terrarium. So if I've actually made a couple of terrariums myself and I haven't used any activated carbon in them when I've put them together. And as far as I know, my terrariums are doing fine. I haven't seen any problems with that. So just from my personal experience, you can add activated carbon to your terrarium, that's great, but I just don't think it's really necessary. I think you can do just fine without having your activated carbon in there. And one of the other big points that's brought up about adding activated carbon to your terrarium is that the activated carbon and the charcoal, since it's an adsorption material, those pores will actually get used up over time if enough toxins and chemicals have binded to the activated carbon. So if you kind of think about it, while there are a lot of pores and binding surfaces on the charcoal, those pores will eventually get used up over time if you give it enough toxins and chemicals. So as those pores get used up, they've binded to the chemicals. You can kind of think about it like the chemicals and the molecules kind of clog those pores, preventing them from binding any further to additional toxins and molecules. And so what happens in a terrarium is that over time, like I'd say estimating about maybe a year or two, your activated carbon is actually going to lose its effectiveness. So while it's definitely going to work in the beginning, eventually it is going to run out and it's not going to perform the filtration properties anymore. And this is why, like in a lot of industrial applications, you'll see they'll actually have to replace the filter every so often because of this exact reason. The activated carbon loses its effectiveness because it has already binded to a whole bunch of chemicals already. And so that's one of the reasons, that's probably the main reason why I'm not really a fan of adding charcoal to a terrarium, is because it's only temporary. It might give you some good filtration in the beginning, maybe for a year or so, but after that it's not really gonna do too much for you. And you'll either have to replace it, which is gonna be kind of a hassle, or you're just gonna have to accept that you're not getting the filtration properties. So if it's gonna run out anyways, then why put it in to begin with? And that's kind of my thought process behind that. Another point that I wanna quickly mention here is that instead of activated carbon, you can actually rely on your moss to perform some of the filtration out there. So what some people like to do is they'll actually put sphagnum moss as the separation layer between the drainage layer and the substrate. And what that does is sphagnum moss can actually absorb chemicals and heavy metals. There's been a couple papers about that if you want to read more. But what people like to do, and what I recommend you can do, is you can just put some moss into your terrarium and just rely on those as your filtration and purification mechanism for your terrarium. And that'll help purify your terrarium without having to go out and buy a bag of charcoal. So that's pretty much why you don't actually need activated carbon for a terrarium. It's not really necessary. It can be helpful in the beginning, but eventually it's going to run out. And in my experience, most of the time your plants are going to be doing just fine without it. That's pretty much all I have for this video. If you guys want to check out more, learn more about that, I have a huge blog post about this on my website, hermitgarden.com. I'll put a link down in the description if you guys want to check that out. But other than that, that's all I have for you guys. If you enjoyed that video, give it a like, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.